people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Our continued coverage of this past weekend's action on the prelim card of Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. Yokasta Valle successfully defended her WBC title against the game challenger in Yadira Bustillos, who managed to make it a fight, albeit by fighting the wrong one. Yadira was noticeably taller and longer than Yokasta Valle, but sold out at every opportunity to get into an exchange. Things moved fast in this fight. No feel-out rounds as it was for the traditional 10-2s instead of 12-3s in a women's boxing match like what we saw in the co-main event between Baumgartner and Boudoir. It's had a much faster pace than that fight and got off to a very fast start. Not too much technique from either combatant, either the champion or the challenger at the start, but little by little, Yokasta Valle started to pull away from Yadira Bustillos, landing the more eye-catching punches, a particular combination that she had a lot of success with. The looping right down the pipe followed by the short left hand. She landed that combination several times successfully throughout the course of the fight, and even though Yadira Bustillos took the punch as well, they still are scoring blows that the judges don't have to look hard to see. In what was a messy affair, many exchanges, head clashes, both fighters were cut throughout the course of this fight, and sometimes playing each other too close to the chest, too far in the pocket. Chaotic. Though as stated, it was the reigning champion Yokasta Valle that started to pull away and create separation as the fight progressed, just showing the more eye-catching punches in the exchange, largely in part because Yadira was giving up her height and giving up her length. She could have, theoretically, made it easier on herself by showing a bit more technique and more of a jab, managing the distance instead of constantly closing it, which brought her within striking distance of Yokasta. You're making it easier for that shorter fighter to land their punches because you're so close to them. Thus, in the end, the prediction stuck and Yokasta Valle was able to hang on to her WBC title in what was a messy, chaotic affair, but still one that she won. You have to assume now that Yokasta has made her MVP debut and successfully defended her title, the first order of business is going to be unification matches. Yokasta Valle is one of 3 reigning champions in the minimum weight division, 2 of which fight under the MVP banner. The other is Canada's Kim Clavel, the reigning IBF champion, where Germany's Sarah Borman holds 2 of the 4 major titles at the weight. And she's not with MVP, so it could break down one of 2 ways. MVP could try to make the fight between Yokasta and Kim Clavel in-house, or they could have one of them challenge Sarah Borman. They have more than enough money to bring Sarah to the United States. I think that either Yokasta or Kim Clavel beat Sarah Borman. I do. Sarah hasn't been looking too hot, hasn't been looking too sharp in her last 2 fights, but she is a unified champion. She's got 2 belts. Now, I believe that Sarah Borman would lose to Yokasta Valle for the same reason Yadira Bustillos just lost to Yokasta Valle. Sarah is a pressure fighter, long and limber for the weight, though often giving it up to trade punches on the inside, and she's very busy within a round, like Yokasta is busy within a round, except I think Yokasta would outdog her mid-range to inside. Yokasta wins. The reason I think Kim Clavel would beat Sarah Borman is a bit different. Kim Clavel is more of a boxer, more of a mover, more of an angler, more bells and whistles and subtleties to her game than a Sarah Borman. For Kim, it's a matter of hit and not get hit. In the pocket, she's no outside cutie pie. She favors mid-range, and she's very tricky there. She can be quite elusive. I think she would out-hustle Sarah Borman. Now it's just a question of how does MVP want to do this? Do they want to do an in-house unification with their 2 champions, or do they want to sick one of them on Sarah Borman? We'll find out in the coming calendar year. For now, congratulations to Yokasta Valle on a successful defense of her green and gold title.
What did I just watch? This is Paulie Malignaggi for Paulie TV. What did I just watch? All right? Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua is over. Thank God it's over. What a joke of a fight. I was hoping that I could at least give Jake credibility and saying, you know what, he took this challenge. You know, even if it's for a lot of money, he still had the guts to walk to the ring and all this stuff. I was hoping, you know, you're going to get knocked out anyway, dude. Like, I was hoping I could say, you know what, because he earned the respect of boxing fans by going out on his shield. The guy just ran for his life. I just watched Jake Paul run for his life for like 5-6 rounds. Literally just run for. He was doing football jukes. You guys watched that fight? Ring was big. I made a freaking point about that ring being big, and he used it to his advantage in terms of survival in every way he could. I mean, this guy literally never tried to win a second of the fight. He was trying to throw a home run punch every once in a while. Then notice every time he got in the clinch, he just went down. Like he just hugged Anthony Joshua, and then like would go down, and the referee would call it a slip and give him a break, and like he would just kill time that way. Then he was completely angling off. He's completely blading his shoulder off completely to the point where he's so bladed off that he can't even punch. He was just trying to make himself as small of a target as possible. Now Anthony Joshua, people are gonna say, oh, why didn't Anthony Joshua catch up to him? Because Anthony Joshua never had fast feet to begin with, and Anthony Joshua honestly should have probably cut off the ring a little bit better. That's my one critique of Joshua. He probably could have cut off the ring a little bit better. Joshua's always never really had the best feet, but in terms of cutting off the ring, could have at least done that. But honestly, what do you want the guy to do?
I understand the sentiments from Paulie Malignaggi in the sense that Jake wasn't really trying to win that fight so much as survive it, just moving away from the guy he's supposed to be trying to beat up. So in that situation, what is Anthony really supposed to do? You see that Paulie Malignaggi is not in any hurry to give Jake his flowers for accepting this fight, and neither is former champion Ishe Smith, who said a real fighter would have went out on his shield. He talked shit about Canelo, talked shit about other fighters like he's that dude. He gets zero credit for running around the ring like a bitch, clinching excessively, falling repeatedly. No, zero credit. Sort of a mixed bag. I've seen some professional boxers give Jake his flowers for going in there and taking his lumps, where Paulie and Ishe don't feel that way. Ishe Smith, who said, running around the ring trying to survive is not boxing. Only props he gets from me is securing a bag. Other than that, he fought like a pure bitch. Any real boxer fought like that, y'all would be killing them on Here Tonight. So stop that he did good shit. Well, he's not a real boxer, Ishe. I mean, I don't think most of the people watching consider him a real boxer. Maybe the problem is Jake does talk like he is a real boxer, he acts like one, and Ishe Smith and some others have not taken kindly to that. So does he deserve any credit for what he put on display this past Friday? I gave him a little. Not necessarily the same credit I would give a bona fide boxer so much as the credit I would give a daredevil, a thrill seeker, someone who's putting themselves in harm's way. Because he did. Though not keeping up any kind of a code, a warrior's code, that I'm not giving him the same credit I would give an actual boxer, but something like what you'd give a daredevil. Ishe continued, the amount of running, clinching, and falling Jake Paul was doing, no real fighter deals with that shit, because real boxers don't fight like that. That's why AJ looked off, and it took him 6 rounds. It had nothing to do with Jake. A fighter like that, you want to make sure you don't run into a shot. Are they being too hard on Jake? Are they holding him up to an unrealistic standard? See, the thing about Paulie and Ishe is they're not going to play Jake Paul the violin because he took his lumps on Friday, because they've taken their lumps many more times than he has. The blood, the sweat, the injuries, the wear and tear from the camps, the long-term effects of being a professional boxer, the highs, the lows, to where if he gets his jaw broke, so fucking what? Comes with the territory. That's how they look at it. You don't get cool points, you don't get brownie points because you're the one who wants to parody a boxer. You're the one who wants to pretend to be a boxer even though you're not a real one. But the injuries are real, the damage. I've got mixed feelings. I'm ambivalent because there were a good number of real boxers that had the opportunity to box that same Anthony Joshua over the years. Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and for whatever reason, those fights did not materialize. This one did. With little friction, Jake accepted the fight. Nowhere near as experienced as a Wilder, as a fury. He took it, and I think there's something to say about that. No, I don't think he ever really tried to win the fight, not based on what I saw, but the fact that he accepted it so easily, where some others did not. I do interpret that as Jake behaving like a real prize fighter. That's a prize fighter's logic. That's what a prize fighter would do. I'll roll the dice with this guy for the money that you are kicking out. I don't consider him a warrior, upholding any warrior's code. I don't think he behaved like a warrior or fought like a warrior, but I never thought that Jake was those things, so I don't actually hold him to that standard. But Paulie Malignaggi and Ishe Smith do, because they're the kind of people that he's pretending to be, that he's parodying, and that is their purview. They're going to hold him to the same standard they hold themselves to, because he's pretending to be one of them. To some degree, their outrage is warranted, their disdain of this character.
Jake Paul is fugazi. He's fake.
That's how you feel?
Truly feel. I'll bust him up and his trainer in the same night. 2 for 1.
That's a 2-for-1 special.
Hey,
you
bro,
heard it right here.
And then I'm looking at his career, I'm watching him fight, and I'm like, I can beat this bum. I can beat this dude. I don't care if he's 175 pounds. I fought bigger guys my entire career. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, he 3 years out of the game, I'm 9 years out of the game. I was like, he ain't got no chin. You know, he ain't ever won the world championship. You know what I'm saying? And so I just went on this major rant, bro, and let him know. 2 for 1. The 2 for 1. Hey, I'll fight you and Jake Paul in the same night. They make their own rules in the game, bro. Because they got the money, they make their own rules. Yeah, he called me up and was like, you get me, right? And I go, well, I want you and your fighter. And he goes, well, you gotta go through me first. And I'm like, oh, that's easy. I'll go through you, but you make sure when you do send the contract having him added on the back end of that. He goes, you only get me. And I go, whoa. I want Jakey Jake. I want fake Jake too. I want you, Dirty Man, and I want Jake Paul too. Yeah, fakey Jake. Both of y'all, same night. Jay Leon, I'm not playing with you, bro. I'm not playing with you. I will smoke you and Jake Paul. Same night, homie. 2 for 1. I'm not playing. Seriously, I'm here. You told me to get in shape. I'm getting in shape. But I don't think you understand, Jay. I don't think you understand what tree you barking under, man. You barking up on a real one. Hall of Famer, homie.
It is true that Timothy Bradley is many times the fighter that Jay Leon Love ever was, and he's the one who trains Jake Paul. Timothy Bradley is a 2-weight world champion who only ever really lost to Manny Pacquiao, and there's no shame in that. Victories over Ruslan Provodnikov and unbeaten Devon Alexander, Juan Manuel Marquez. Timothy Bradley has been there and done that with some of the best fighters of his era, and he is a Hall of Fame inductee, something that Jay Leon Love is not, nor will he ever be. The only thing with Tim is he is noticeably smaller than those fighters. Timothy Bradley, like several other esteemed professionals, is sick of the circus and wants Jake Paul out of boxing. I think he will be, at least momentarily. He just got his jaw broken in 2 places. I don't expect Jake Paul to be in a boxing ring for a while. I mean, maybe towards the end of the second quarter of next year at the earliest. Tim wants all the smoke. He wants Jay Leon Love. He wants Jake. Why does it feel like Timothy Bradley almost takes it personal that Jake Paul is parodying a boxer and an actual boxer, somebody who's actually fought, is the one that's training him? I was never as annoyed by Jake Paul as some other people. A social media influencer who wants to try his hand at boxing. What the hell is wrong with that? Basketball players, MMA fighters, fighting who he could, fighting who was safe. It didn't really bother me, but then again, I'm not the one that bled for this. The boxers themselves, some of them, are going to have a different perspective because this is their bread and butter. This is what they've sacrificed their lives for, and a lot of them just don't got the stomach for Jake and what he pretends to be, the circus that he's putting on. Paulie Malignaggi, Ishe Smith, now Timothy Bradley. Wasn't it enough that Anthony Joshua just broke the guy's jaw in 2 places? What more do you want? I think they want to run him out of boxing. I think they want Jake Paul out of the sport, effective immediately. More than that, Timothy seems to want Jay Leon Love to suffer penance for being a pugilist, a bona fide boxer, simultaneously being a party to Jake Paul's circus. So do we see Timothy Bradley come back in 2026 against Jalen Love? Is that a fight that could legitimately happen? Based on what Timothy said, it sounds like it. Though I myself don't have the anger, the rancor towards Jake Paul and his team that some others have. I don't view this sport, this industry I should say, through rose-tinted lenses. I don't think anybody should. And for all the talk about how Jake Paul is parodying a boxer while not keeping up with the Warriors code, he does have people talking about boxing. And I noticed that, whether you like him or not, he brought a media giant to the table in Netflix, and who knows if their interest in boxing doesn't extend to something more regular, that down the line they don't make more of a commitment, but this is where it starts, and that's largely in part to Jake Paul. I guess what I'm getting at is he hasn't been completely bad for boxing, even if you don't like him or the aesthetic of his fights. There has been an added benefit to his presence in the sport because he seems to have more people talking about boxing than the actual boxers. How many have we seen screw the pooch and not fight in fights that we wanted to see them in? When a Floyd Schofield regularly backs out of fights with Ashton Silva and Shakur Stevenson, prices himself out of an Abdullah Mason fight. When Virgil Ortiz and his team price themselves out of a Boots Ennis fight. All of this is detrimental to boxing, more than anything Jake Paul has ever done. The boxers not behaving like boxers, whereas Jake, in his own way, has managed to keep this sport in the mainstream, in the public consciousness. And don't forget that he's done quite a bit for the women, and still doing a lot for the women. More than most other established promotional outfits, MVP is helping women's boxing along to where I don't hate Jake Paul. I don't have any rancor towards him. And I know that he's a troll. I don't consider him a warrior. I don't actually consider Jake a bona fide boxer. I don't. But I'd be lying to you if I told you that nothing good came out of his presence in this sport. Something did. In his own way, he's managed to keep it talked about in the public consciousness. Go to Boxing Scene or Ring Magazine right now, and the most talked about story is Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. The most talked about boxing match this weekend was Jake Paul's boxing match with Anthony Joshua. Look at the metrics. Whether you like him or not, Jake Paul has managed to keep this sport in the mainstream and in the public consciousness more than many bona fide boxers, legitimate pugilists, and I happen to think that's a good thing. In its own way, it is. He is exposing the sport to a younger generation than your average boxer could, as he is more recognizable as a public figure than your average professional boxer. So that's the silver lining for me, the saving grace. Jake may be a troll, and he's not a real boxer, not a warrior, but he's doing his part.